In the foreword of her book, Nelson Mandela describes Ambassador Thandi Lujabe-Rankoe as a remarkable person, as a daughter of Africa, whose record demonstrates the invincibility of the human race. Welcome, Your Excellency. Thank you for having me here today and inviting me along.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with Nelson Mandela. He was a friend of yours, somebody you knew very well?
I can't say a friend. We called him Tata, meaning father. According to my language, we just say to elderly people, Tata. We don't, even if it's not your real father, but because of the age, it's Tata, and for a lady, you say Mama. He was that type of a person who was respected. I knew him actually from 1959 because he was a lawyer together with Oliver Tambo in Johannesburg, and I was working for New Age at the time, and they were very active already at that time in politics, and he was also involved with the treason trial in South Africa. So I've known him for a very, very long time. Of course, yes, as you know, he went to jail for a long time and he came out. He was very popular among South Africans in general, but also the world over. When he came out of Robben Island, he was received by many countries, and I think the first visit was Tanzania, and then Norway in Europe, because the Norwegians were very active during our struggle. They are the ones who actually gave us a lot of support. So that was his second visit. So he has been everything to me for years. Visiting Norway, I'm mentioning this because at the time when he visited Norway, I was the chief representative in Norway. So it was a real honor for me to receive him in Norway.
And that was how long after he'd been released from prison?
When he came over to
Norway?
Yeah, only a few months after he was released. I remember going to visit him in his house because he appointed me to go to Tanzania, and I was going to be the first South African ambassador to Tanzania. But I didn't want to go to Tanzania because I knew that Tanzania had struggled a lot and we were the last ones to get independence. So there was hardly anything in Tanzania. For me to start a new embassy, I was very upset. So I decided that, okay, I will go and talk to him about it and say, oh, please, Dada, don't send me there. Anyway, I went there in the morning accompanied by a friend. He came out wearing his gown because it was early in the morning. And when he came out, he just said, "Oh, hello, Thandi. Oh, happy to see you. And I wish you luck in Tanzania. You go well." And then after that, he just said, "Oh, you know, I am tired because one man came here complaining that another one had stolen his chicken. And so, Thandi, I want to go and rest." And he left me.
So you didn't actually say to him that you didn't want to go to Tanzania then?
No. Then I went out and I just cried and cried.
Oh.
And anyway, I did go to Tanzania.
Yeah.
And I have no regrets, actually.
How long were you in Tanzania for?
4 years.
For 4 years.
Yes.
So once Nelson Mandela was released, is that the time thereafter you went back to South Africa? Is that where you met him initially, and that's where he appointed you as High Commissioner?
Yes, yes.
And
We went back home. Most people started going back home, especially the leadership, 1991, 92. But we were chief representatives all over the world. We were asked to report in South Africa on the 1st of June, 1994. But for me, I asked for special permission to go to South Africa when Mandela was made president.
Wait, were you at the inauguration?
I was. I had to. They were saying, no, we should be in the countries where we were and have something. I said, no, please, I want to be there. So they finally allowed me to go to South Africa for the inauguration.
Because you had spent 33 years in exile.
Yes.
Going back to the start, what is it that really prompted you to sacrifice your life fighting for equality in South Africa? I've read through your memoirs, A Dream Fulfilled, and there were many, many incidents in there, and it's truly a remarkable journey of a remarkable person. But what do you think? Where did it all start?
Oh, well, I was a nurse at a place called Alice in the Eastern Cape, and very close to where I was, there was the University of Water. I'm mentioning this. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you about that. But then in South Africa, they wanted to introduce the Bantu education, and the nursing education was also going to be affected. And nurses used to be very good in South Africa. So then when they wanted to do that, we decided to go on strike. So we were out of not doing any work for 2 days. We were sitting outside, but within the premises of the hospital. After 2 days, we were given notice. You come back to the wards and work, or leave the hospital. Some people went in, others, including myself, we didn't, because we believed in what we were doing. So we were asked to leave. So we left. My father came to pick me up. I was afraid he would scold me, but he didn't. He just took me home. And then I was there, of course, not knowing what to do now. And I asked my father, please, can I visit my aunt in Johannesburg? My father said, yes, I'll put you in the train. You go. Then I stayed with my aunt, but I could see at night that there are people who come to this house. You know, they go to the back. What are they doing? Some men. Anyway, one day my aunt said to me, oh, someone wants to talk to you. And it was a relative of mine. I didn't know he was part of these men who used to come to my auntie's place. These were ANC people discussing politics and planning and plotting, all these things. So this cousin of mine then said, oh, I understand that you are in trouble, but I am going to talk to Ruth first. Ruth first was at New Age. There was a newspaper called New Age, and it was very political. So he said, I'll talk to her and see if you can work there. So he did, and then I joined New Age. Then came a time when the regime started arresting people at New Age. And then people leaving the country. Already at the time, there was an underground route for people to leave South Africa. Even though it was dangerous, but it was there. Some people were caught and others were lucky. Everything would go well. So I was at this New Age, and since people were leaving, they arranged for me to leave as well. So that's how I left the country.
So your dream had been to be a nurse,
Yes.
and you gave that dream up fighting for your rights within South Africa
yes.
because of the act which would be discriminatory against black people
Yes,
in South
indeed.
Africa.
Yes.
And you therefore went to stay with your aunt,
Mm-hmm.
and then you joined the New Age paper, and then you found a route to leave South Africa. Now tell me what it was. I mean, whilst living with your aunt, is there anything specific that happened that really gave you that determination to fight for the ANC and ultimately for South Africa?
Oh, yes. I mean, knowing that these people were around, and at my auntie's place at night, and nobody would know, of course, because they would go there at night and then leave the place. I knew that this thing was very serious. And me at new age, now people being arrested, this was a serious matter. And I agreed to leave because that was the only way of saving my life. And besides saving my life, it was time for me to fight for freedom. I believed in it. I believed in fighting for our freedom. And at the time, actually, I didn't even worry about my parents. What would my parents say? All I wanted was to go out. And we already had offices in Tanzania. So we would be received there and be told exactly what to do. But I can tell you that the ANC didn't believe in everyone going for military training. Others had to go to school, and become professionals. And if the ANC didn't do that, I don't think that we would have been able to take over in South Africa and lead the country. But we were able to do that because there were those who were very professional, but also we had those who were in the army.
Whilst you were at your aunt's house and before you made the sacrifice to leave, you also witnessed the death of your cousin.
Yes, oh yes. In South Africa they had what we call the pass laws. And if you forget your pass and the police catch you, that was for the black people. Then they would beat you up or kill you or take you to the potato farms.
The potato farms?
Yeah, potato farms.
And what was the potato farm? What happened there?
That's where they ill-treated the blacks. They had to dig with their hands. Yeah, and if you get tired, they beat you up and kill you.
So black people were required to carry a passbook in South Africa all the time?
All the time, because this is what happened to my cousin. He was from work and he was working for Patco buses, and he got home, he took his jacket, put it on the chair, and then went to a shop nearby. Then there were the police. They said pass, because they would just say pass, and then you have to take out your pass and give to them. So he said, oh no, I've just taken off my jacket. It's in the house. We can go together to the house. They refused and they took him. They arrested him. And of course, it's terrible how it used to happen. There would be those white people, the bosses who have these farms, and then they are lining up like that, and then they would look at all these guys who've been arrested. Who is the strongest? Okay, you now to the potato farms. Well, he went to the potato farms, and that's where he was killed. That was the end of him.
And how is it that your aunt found out?
There was a hospital not very far from there, and for some reason, he had a piece of paper in his pocket, written his address. I think he knew or he suspected that something may happen and he will not be traced. And they found this, and then they contacted that address. So they came then to pick up the body.
Were you there at the time?
No, I wasn't.
How did that make you feel seeing that firsthand? Because so far you'd already sacrificed your, life goal of wanting to be a nurse as a result of the discrimination without South Africa at the time because of apartheid.
Mm.
And now you witnessed, or you were witnessing the death of your close
cousin.
family member, and no doubt
Mm-hmm.
the impact that had on your aunt and your cousins at the time.
Mm-hmm. Those were difficult times. But one had to be strong. You had to talk to yourself and say, okay, this is happening. So what am I going to do about it? And that is the reason why I decided that the best thing for me was to fight the regime, join others and fight the regime. Because we wouldn't be where we are today if we all just sat and looked and things happened. We wouldn't be where we are today.
Did you always have certainty that South Africa would be gained? They would get equality. There would be equality for Black people within South Africa. Was there any doubt in your mind? Or
No,
did you
I
always
believed in that very strongly. I did. I believed in that, but I wasn't sure if I would ever see South Africa again myself. I wasn't sure, but I knew that we would get our freedom one day. You know why I didn't? I wasn't sure because so many things happened. For an example, South Africa shares borders with the neighboring countries, and that's where we were. Like countries like Botswana, they're so close to South Africa. And these people, by these people, I mean the South African army would cross over. They had spies, number one. We were infiltrated. So this was another problem. But these guys would cross over and study the situation where we are and come at night and kill people. I remember on the 15th of June 1985, they came to Botswana and killed 13 people. And after that, they crossed over and they were celebrating. It was on radio. I remember I got on the car. It was winter. June is winter. It's cold. And I was taking my daughter to school. I switched on the radio. Oh, people were dead. And then you can't just be crying. You have to think what next to do. And the next thing I had to do was to try and inform our headquarters that this has happened and arrange for the funeral, all these things. And then you bury them, and fortunately, I don't, when something happens, I concentrate on that. I don't cry or anything. But then when it is all over, it is then that I really behave like a mad woman. I start screaming all over the place. But when it happens, I attend to things peacefully. I focus. It affects me afterwards, not immediately.
Your Excellency, I mean, having gone through your book, there wasn't just one of those occasions. They were just one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. Loss, death, brutality, and you witnessed all of this over and over again. So that's why I call you truly remarkable, because for you to be constantly going through this all the time, repeatedly, yet gaining the strength to keep going on, keep going forward is a sign of somebody truly remarkable. And was it the same thing you were telling yourself over and over again when you were seeing all these things, when you were witnessing these things? Were you telling yourself, nope, that's it, we've got to keep going, we've got to keep going? Is that how you found that resolve, how you found that resilience?
No, I just, as you rightly say, I just told myself that I have to keep on going. And I remember one time, you know, we were always in danger of being killed or whatever outside when we were outside South Africa. And I remember one time when my daughter was small, I felt there were people coming, you know, surrounding our house. And I woke her up, and she was with a cousin of hers. And I said, wake up, sit here. I don't want them to kill you sleeping. Look at them. They must kill you whilst you are looking at them, not when you are sleeping on that bed. And I would make them sit there. And they knew. And sometimes we would have to run away. Especially after the raid, we couldn't stay in the house where we were. We would have to go and ask for shelter. And people, of course, obviously, I can't blame them. They were afraid to accommodate us. We only needed a sleeping place, not during the day. During the day, we were not really afraid of, not afraid, but nighttime, we needed shelter. But people were afraid. But I remember very clearly, one day, it was late at night, we were looking for a place to sleep. And we knocked at one lady's house. And she opened the door and looked at us. What is it? So we said, we've come to ask for a place to sleep. She stood there and looked at us for a long time. Then after that, she said, come in. When they come to kill you here in my house, we'll all die together. Yeah.
Were there lots of people like that you found along the way that were supporting you?
No, people were very afraid. Not that they didn't want to help us, but being associated with us was not the best thing.
How old was your daughter at the time?
I think my daughter was about 8, 9. It's better if you sit and you're watching them, let them kill you.
What did you want that to achieve? For if that had happened at the time, what did you think by seeing her or them seeing you?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you think you would have achieved in that? Would you want them to live with the remembering your faces?
They wouldn't have bothered. But I personally, then for my own sake, I would have looked at them. I wouldn't run away.
In the sense of your head held high, with dignity.
Yes. Because I remember when they came to Botswana in 1985, they killed a few. There were a few ladies as well, but I remember one lady that actually called. I was picking up my daughter from school, and she said, oh, can you come? I'm feeling cold and I'm missing my mother. So I said, no, we can't come to your house because I don't want these people to catch us on the road, because we lived a little bit far away. I said, and my daughter has to do homework. And then my daughter said, oh no, mommy, I'll do my homework. Let's go and see Auntie Lindy. So we went. When we got there, she was a bit funny. She said, I'm cold. I get a blanket there. My mother had given me a rug. So we got the rug, we covered her. And whilst we were there was a knock at the door. And one guy came in. I remember he was a slim young man wearing a navy blue trousers and a white shirt. And it was a cousin of hers. And she started shouting. She said, "Oh, you are here. Did you see my mother before you came here? Have you got a message from my mother for me?" This guy said no, and she was very angry. Anyway, I said, "No, don't be angry, just leave him," because also he was treated badly at the border by the police. So I said, "Please leave him alone, let him calm down." Then after some time, we decided that, okay, now we should go. I left with my daughter, went home. In the morning, that's the time I was telling you, I switched on the radio and they said people had been killed. She was one of those and her husband. And that guy was hiding in the wardrobe. You know, when I got there were bullets, even clothes. They were just doing rubbish. They killed them, and then on the clothes also, boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
It's senseless, completely senseless. There was...
Yes. Yes.
Why do you think they targeted them in particular?
No, not them. As I say, there were many of us in different countries.
Right.
Yeah. And because they were spies.
Right, okay.
They would know then that there are these ones who live in this house and another house or whatever, and then plan to attack. But of course, they have the ammunition and they have the transport, and the border is so near, so they cross over and just kill and go with no shame.
So you were constantly living in danger?
Yes, all the time.
And you had been in exile since the age of, what, 25?
Yes.
And you just went from country to country.
Yes.
And did you not get tired along the way? Did you not ever have moments where you just felt that you just couldn't go on?
You know what? When we were in exile, we were like one big family. Those days, one big family. You wouldn't have two of those blouses I don't have. You would give me one. And eating, we would share everything. And Oliver Tambo, who was the president of the ANC then, was like our father. He brought us up really the way our parents would have done. There is a book that we wrote. Many of us are in that, have written about Oliver Tambo, and the title of the book is Oliver Tambo Remembered. He was our father. We wouldn't be where we are today without him. And he is the one who made sure that some of us went to school, others military training. He was really a good man, a very good man. If you do something wrong, you will be called aside, talk to you. It's not for everybody to know that you've done something wrong. You would be punished, but privately, you know. He was treating us like our parents would have done, really. He brought us up very well. Yeah. We didn't have clothes, number one, We got clothes from, old clothes from Europe. And then after every 2 months, you are allowed to choose what fits you. But I remember one incident when I was asked to go and speak. It was a women's conference in Czechoslovakia. And then other comrades my size would wash their clothes, give to me, so that I should look like other people when I'm there. You can't find things like that these days. People don't do that. But in the ANC those days, we did that. And when I go back, I wash and I hand them back. to those comrades. There was so much solidarity. We knew why we were out there. We knew what we were fighting for. There was nothing like this is above the other one. There was nothing like that. We were one big, solid family.
It's remarkable because I think obviously you had left your own parents and your family behind.
Yes.
To go into exile, and then at the same time you found another family there. At what point were you reunited with your mum and your dad? Was it during the exile?
During exile time when I was in Nigeria, the apartheid regime started dividing the provinces, and my parents were in one place called the Transkei, and so they had they gave those ones Transkei passports because to them it was just one province that had nothing. But they gave them passports. So I told them in Nigeria, they said, look, we'll have your parents here. An arrangement will be made for them to come to Nigeria. And my parents came to Nigeria, and the Nigerians went inside the plane to get my parents out. I couldn't believe it that I was seeing my parents. Actually, this photograph you see here was taken in Nigeria. They dressed up my mother in Nigerian clothes.
Was this the Nigerian government at the time that did this?
Yes. So my parents, I think, stayed for 1 month, and knowing Nigerians, my parents were not with me all the time. They would say, oh, these are our parents too.
Oh.
Yeah, Nigerians are like that. And because my father was a teacher, and then they would take him to the University of Ibadan and to other schools. Yeah, so that was when I saw my parents for the first time after many years. But God is great, because after that, my father had a car accident and died on the spot.
So how did you come to know that your father had passed away?
My sister's daughter, I knew that they had a phone, those old phones. Yeah. And I called. By this time, actually, I was in Zimbabwe. I called because I had a funny dream. I dreamt like there was a car accident, and when I was taking my daughter to school, there was a garage nearby. I saw the same car that I had seen in my dream, a Volkswagen, and I said, no, man, there must be something wrong. So I left my child at school, and I went to look for these public phones, and I called. So I said to this girl, hello, what is happening there? He said, why are you asking me? I said, is my mother or my father alive? So she just screamed and said, your father is dead. I said, my father is dead? He said, yeah. He was helping some people, and the truck came in. The car rolled and he died. That was it. What could I do? Nothing. You can't go home. No, but after some time, I got photographs of the funeral. But that's all you can get, through other means, But otherwise, you are even lucky even to know that something like that has happened. The 80s, there was hope. There was hope. Now, like Thabo Mbeki started inviting students from university in Cape Town talking to them. Now our headquarters was in Lusaka, and things were happening, and there were some white ladies who were arrested, and they were out of jail, and the ANC was able to brought them to Lusaka, no, to Zimbabwe actually. There was a conference, I was there, I attended the conference in Zimbabwe, where for the first time ever, women from South Africa were able to cross over to Zimbabwe, and we had this beautiful conference. First, it was difficult looking at each other, because these people were not in exile, but they came over talking about what is happening at home and us, just sharing experiences. And I remember very well at that conference, there's a lady, a Zimbabwean lady, who stood up and said, I have a farm. I had a farm with my husband, and we had all these black people. They always employ black people, of course, to work for them. And he said, then the guerrillas, that's our people, were crossing to Zimbabwe and got to this farm and killed the husband. You know how it happens. It's not that they just wanted to kill. There must have been some confrontation, and of course he died. The point is, this woman said, after that thing happened, I didn't know what to do. But it was these very black people. Your funeral took place and people left me. He says, but these black people never left me up to this day.
And this was a white South African lady saying this
it was a white Zimbabwean, isn't it? Yeah. We had the conference in Zimbabwe. The South Africans were telling their stories as well. We were telling ours also, being in exile. And then what was interesting now, at the end of the conference, we went down because they were staying in a hotel, and they had put their suitcases like this, in the middle. And then we exiled ones stood this side, and the South Africans stood this side, and we looked at each other. And then one person suddenly just crossed over to the ones who came from South Africa, and we now all hugged and cried. Yeah, someone had to do something. We couldn't just stand there and look at each other. I think the feelings, the emotions were there, but it was difficult to start and do anything. But one person was strong enough just to hug, and we hugged, and that was very nice. Anyway, I'm mentioning this because this was in the 80s, from 86, 87, we could see the light at the end of the tunnel.
You start to see signs
of
liberation for black people in South Africa.
Things were really happening. Things were happening. And at that time, I was, 88, I was sent to Norway as chief representative. And when you are in these countries, you also have the South African embassy. And then you have your own office, the office that you have to run with some stuff, of course. And it's not easy because the regime would always be fighting you. But also we would have to be very careful because you don't know what they are going to do to you or your office, that sort of thing. Yeah, even though you are in a country that is supporting you. So it was during that time that we now knew that we were going to go back home. those were very interesting times from 88, 89, very interesting times. And of course, the countries where we were supporting us and making sure that even when we go home, there would be funds to start doing things. As I say, I was in Norway. The Norwegians helped up to the end. They really helped. But also, I don't know whether you know this, in Tanzania, we were given land by the Tanzanians, and it was during the time of Mwalimu Nyerere then. We built the South Africa that we wanted for ourselves. From kindergarten, primary school, high school, our own hospitals, our own theaters, our own houses, and named the streets with the streets in South Africa. Our own farms producing our own food and our own graveyard, everything.
And where were you doing that? Where was that
In
happening?
Tanzania.
In Tanzania?
Yeah, in Tanzania. In Tanzania. And it was called Mazimbu, but it changed after Solomon Mahlangu was killed by the South African regime. So we named the place Solomon Mahlangu Freedom College. And when we left, the ANC handed over that whole place to the Tanzanians to say thank you to them. But the graveyard is still there. People still go and visit. And I put a small monument there. Yeah, people go there. Beautiful. It was a beautiful place. They helped us a lot. Oh, I must mention also, the graves there are the same, beautiful stone. And it was one man, not alone, but working with other people doing that. But he wouldn't go off when other people go off at 4. He wouldn't. He would still remain there doing the finishing touches. And they called him Past 4. So his name was Past 4 because he wouldn't leave the place until after 4. But he managed to go back to South Africa, but he passed away now a few years back. Anyway, let me continue. I was in Norway at the time, and things were happening. Nelson Mandela was released. And one reception after the other when he came to Norway, and he was invited for that conference on the anatomy of hate. Yeah, that was very good. And before then, when I got to Norway in 1989, we had the first ever conference that was attended by the leadership of the ANC and all the chief representatives all over the world. That took place in a place called Gran in 1989 in Norway. That was really good. It brought all of us together under the same roof to discuss issues, and it was just the right time, 1989.
And who was part of that? What sort of people? Was it only the ANC, the African National Congress, or were there people from different organisations?
No, it was just the ANC.
Just the ANC, okay.
Just the ANC.
So you had then a platform where you could speak from, and so clearly that you were afforded more and more opportunities to get your voices heard. You had this platform. So after this point, when is it? Was it after you found out that Nelson Mandela was being released that you would be able to return from exile back to South Africa? Was it at that point?
Yeah, well, Nelson, already we knew that we were on our way back home.
You literally, as soon as you found out.
Yes, we knew that we were on our way back home. As I say, 88, 89, we knew that we were going back home. but we couldn't tell exactly when. Then Nelson Mandela was released and things happened so fast. And the leadership, I think they went back in 91 from outside, going back home. And we had a big conference in Kimberley where Mandela attended and Oliver Tambo, but he had already had a stroke. So we had that big conference there. That was the time, actually, we were allowed in South Africa, but we got permission, I think, for just 1 week to be in South Africa because of that conference, because they said we still have to be cleared. I mean, it was still the white people. We were just given permission to be there for the conference. It was at that conference that we, as women, stood up one by one. We said we are getting this independence and we want 30% women. Because now at the conference, they were talking about everything else, but not about the role of women. So women stood up one by one. And then Mandela and Oliver Tambo, the conference adjourned and they went out and then they came back and said, yes, 30%.
So what were you granted the 30% for?
In Parliament, everywhere.
So you would have a voice in Parliament?
Yes.
Women will constitute 30% of Parliament?
Exactly. You know why? Because we were fighting together outside. Women were always there in the liberation struggle, in the army, everywhere. They were there, women were there. And so why should you now forget about women who have been with you all this time and doing the same thing as you were doing? So we said no. And that's why now you see, I think now it's 45% or 50%, I think 50% of women.
In Parliament?
Yes. Yes. Anyway, then it was that conference. Then we went back to our own, to the countries where we were, because we're not allowed in South Africa yet. But now it was really preparing to go home. But the most interesting thing is the elections. Isn't it we're all outside there in different countries? And the elections were going to take place in South Africa. So we had to run elections in the countries where we were ourselves. But the problem was that the South African embassies, they thought that elections could take place in their embassies, around the embassy there. We said no. And for us, for me in Norway, it was good because we had so much support from the Norwegians, and only to find that the Norwegians, when they do elections, they do them in schools. So there are schools that have all this equipment. So we were given a school. And then, of course, you have to tell all the South Africans around Norway to come and vote. But that was a very, very interesting thing. Voting for the first time in your life.
And how old were you by this point?
And I remember the one lady fainted after voting.
Oh,
yes.
How old were you when you were able to vote for the first time?
Oh, but it was in 90-something. No, I would have to count the years. I don't know.
But a long, long time. It was a long time.
Yes.
After.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, voting for the first time. Yeah. And then, of course, the Mandela Day. Yeah, he's president of the country.
Had you spoken to him before the inauguration took place? Had you spoken to Mr. Mandela before?
No, I had been there to see him after he was released. he was in Winnie's house, in Winnie Mandela's house. When I went there just briefly to say hello. Yeah. Yeah, yes. Anyway, let me continue now with this whole thing. Then Mandela Day came, yeah? 27th of April, right? Yeah. We were told that, oh no, you cannot come to South Africa. You have to celebrate out there where you are. I said, no, not me. I can't. Please give me permission to come home, to celebrate, go to union buildings and actually see this thing for myself.
This is what you fought for
Yes,
your whole life. This is what you dedicated.
Yes. And then, you see, I wanted to have a nice dress, and someone had given me material. Just African material some time ago. I got someone to make a dress for me. Okay. I went for the inauguration. Now, the white people, sorry to say, but these white people from Foreign Affairs, they are lining up, they're wearing their suits, dark suits, and visitors are coming in. Huh? You know how it is when, let's say, Nyerere is coming? They are supposed to rush there and receive, but they were not doing that. And I saw this thing. I forgot that this was not my territory, but I started receiving all the cars running this way. And they were saying, hey, who are you? I said, excuse me, just leave me alone. Because I knew the people. I mean, look at Kaunda. If there is nobody just receiving and hand over, and then other people take them in, I think those white people from Foreign Affairs, they had no idea what this protocol is all about. But I did that, and I'm happy I did that. But then I saw, I saw photographs. Was it photographs or what? Was the TV those days or what? I can't remember. But I think I was so tired. When I went now to take my seat, I sat like, so that was not good. But I had done what I wanted to do, and I was happy I did that. Because we had been taught protocol. Why were they not doing that? Receive all these African heads of state. They should have been there. Instead, they were standing there wearing their suits. So I said, oh, yeah.
And you subsequently, you met Mr. Mandela many times after that. And his wife as well at that time. You would meet them often after that?
No, not often. Not often. It only when he visits, like I was telling you, he came to Norway. Actually, 3 times he came for the conference on the anatomy of hate, and then came for the 17th of May, then came to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Then I'm with him all the time. I was the chief representative in Norway from I got there towards the end of 1988 and left on the 1st of June 94 because we had to clear everything. We had been there for years doing things, so we had to wind up and do everything and then go back.
Because like we said at the beginning, when we first started the interview, you spoke about his inauguration.
Yeah.
When you you were holding on to him because of so many people. And
it was when he visited Norway.
Yeah.
He visited Norway, and then there was a church service. And because everybody wanted to shake his hand, And people were all, after the service, it was difficult to get in the car because, and so you saw, I showed you in the book, the priest trying to open the door and push him inside the car, and I'm with him, but the crowds were so much. So now I was screaming, saying, Dada, don't leave me. And then there he says, oh, Thandi, you know, my buttons. Yeah, so...
And
but, yes.
But you met him and his wife subsequently many times after that event? You became quite close with his wife, didn't you?
No, we became quite close. We became quite close. Yeah, you know what? I became ambassador in Mozambique. And he lived in Mozambique with Graça Machel. And lunchtime, because they were not far from the office, I would go and have lunch with them. I mean, we just became so very close. And I'm not going to say too many things, but when his health was not good, first he was at home in the Eastern Cape in Qunu. I would go and visit them, and then they moved to Johannesburg, and I was in Johannesburg, so I was in and out of the place. He became now quite sick, so I had to support Graça Machel. And those days, I had a very good driver. So I just got I was home. I got a message that you have to come now. I went. That was the time he was really now going. And then from that time, I just was there in that room with Graça Machel, going through things, and then the funeral. I was there with her all the time. And when the visitors came, the heads of state to come and say sorry to her now, I would be there. Like Kaunda came, and I mustn't say this because Trevor is here, but he asked me to pray, and I didn't know what to say, but there was one young lady who was there with me and KK, and of course Graça, and she prayed so well. That was beautiful. I mean, people like Obama and others, besides being there at the stadium and all that, they came to the house, you know, more personal. Like I'm saying, President Kaunda came, and some of these people, they just came to be with her, which I thought was really, really beautiful. Difficult times, but yeah, it was good. And then from there, when everything was over in Johannesburg, then he had to be laid to rest at home, at his own home in the Eastern Cape. So again, I had to go there with Graça Machel and others. Yeah. Even there, lots and lots of people came. I had never seen anything like that, funeral like that. It was beautiful. But what I liked about the Eastern Cape, where he was born, when we landed, of course the cars were there, and as we were driving, the airport where we landed It's Mtata Airport, you would know that. But there were beautiful posters and people lining the road, both young and old. It was so beautiful up to his house. Very, very nice. Very nice. Yeah. And so I was put to rest. But at least it was good to be there and being able to give support when it was needed. Yeah.
And I'm sure for him and for you as well, knowing that your dream was fulfilled.
Yes,
After
indeed.
all of those years of struggle, you were reassured in the sense that the mission
accomplished.
Yeah. And you're still very close to Mr. Mandela's wife now as well.
We are close. We'll always be close. We're very close.
What would you like to share about? I know you told me earlier on about a lunch that you had with Mr. Mandela and his wife. And it was such a memorable one. Would you mind sharing it?
No, you know, as I was saying to you, at lunchtime, I would go to their house, leave my office and go there. Not every day, but now and again. Or she would say, "Oh, but why don't you come? We have lunch." Then, so we were sitting, the three of us, having lunch, and then now he says, "Oh, Thandi." I say, "Yes, Tata. You know, this is a very lucky woman." So I say, "Yes, Tata. You know, this woman, First Lady 2 times. First, Samora Machel, and now me, Nelson Mandela." So the lady says, He said, "Whoa, tell me, am I lying?"
Did you start laughing?
I laughed so hard.
And did she laugh as well?
He didn't laugh, he just said, "Whoa, what are you saying?" But with me, I laughed so hard.
And you've gone on since then. Every day still you are doing so much work around the world. I know you've worked in schools with regards to medical care, and there's just still so much you're doing. I mean, you're just back from Norway as well at the moment, and you were there as well as part of what event were you celebrating in Norway?
The 50th anniversary of Fellesrådet. Fellesrådet is a Norwegian council on Africa.
What is it, to end on this interview, what is it that you'd like to share to everybody who'll be watching this interview? Is there anything you'd like to say to them about your struggle, about your life, about your history, about your dream that's been fulfilled?
I would just like to say that, like there is no easy way to freedom or to anything actually. You struggle a bit, but don't say, "Oh no, this is the end of me." You have to be strong. You can have support from other people, but first and foremost, it is you. You have to talk to yourself. This is what I want for myself, and I'm going to try and make it. Otherwise, it's not possible. During the liberation struggle, I mean, those were difficult times. But you had to talk to yourself and say, "Okay, I came out. I want this freedom. for myself and the people of South Africa. And I'm going to struggle and make sure that I get there. You can you can have those sentiments or whatever. Some people fall apart, even if they've promised themselves. But there are people who are strong, or maybe it is not just being strong. Some people, they say, oh, God has helped me to be where I am today. But I believe that first and foremost, you have to talk to yourself and say, this is what I want for myself.
And just remain steadfast.
Yes.
And just do not give up until
don't give up. Just don't, because once you give up, then you'll fall apart.
And the truth of it is, if you had given up in that struggle, then we wouldn't be where we are today.
No, and I wouldn't be where I am today. But I learned so much. There were good and bad times, even after our independence, because I remember as a woman, I was sent by Mandela to Tanzania. I was the first black woman ambassador in Tanzania. And they looked at it. I mean, you know how they are, Europeans, all these ambassadors, when they see me, when I go to a reception, they wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't talk. You can imagine I'm standing there on my own, and they're just looking at me. It was terrible. But I remember that one day, one guy who looked like Indian-like comes to me. He says, excuse me, what's your name? What are you doing here? Which embassy? I explained. And then he said, you know what? From today, you'll never stand alone. And we would go to a reception or dinner, and he would introduce me to people. And that was the beginning. And they became such close friends of mine. They live in Malaysia. He was working for the UN. And they became very close to me, that couple. We still communicate with each other even today. Or actually, I took my daughter to Malaysia to visit them. We went there to visit them. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard sometimes, I'm telling you. Very. And like in Tanzania, I start a mission. Then they send all those white guys to come and work with me. And then we have a meeting in the office. And I'm talking to them. They don't say a word, and they just use their, I don't know what you call this, to each other. And then that's the end of the meeting. They don't say a word. Then when they go, I would go to the toilet and cry, wipe my tears, and come out as if nothing has happened. But then at the end of the year, because I felt that, this thing is going to destroy me health-wise. I'll go mad, I'll go crazy. But why should I go crazy after fighting for this? Why? So at the end of the year, the gentleman at Foreign Affairs was Botha. I wrote to him. I said, please, can you take your people away from here and bring new stuff? Well, he told me that I was a very bad person and I don't know what. But I couldn't be bothered because I could see this thing was going to affect my health now. Anyway, they left, and the only person who remained was an administrator who was very good. And then they started now mixing a few white people and some black people. Then I got a building, not as an office, was it the residence? Between the two. And then Mandela came to open this. But I decided that I was going to invite this white guy, this bother, because he was in charge at headquarters. I sent him an invitation with his wife to come. They came and now started smiling and stopped saying that I'm a bad person, because I think they thought I wouldn't even invite them, but I did. I wanted to show him that, I'm not like that. We have to work together. And they had to give me support because they had been in the system for so many years doing their own thing, and they had never seen black people around there. But now they had to recognize us because we were there, and they couldn't wish us away. Yeah. I'm getting angry now.
No. Truly remarkable. Like you said, if it wasn't for people like you, people like Mr. Mandela, people alive, people that have passed away, people that have lost their lives, South Africa wouldn't be where it is today with regards to the liberation of black people. And that is down to people like you.
Yeah. I mean, look now at when they received the Nobel Peace Prize, because it was Mandela and de Klerk together. This is what the Norwegians did. And then after the ceremony in the evening, there's a place, a hotel called Gran. That's where they normally have now the dinner. So we all went to Gran. But it's in winter, when this thing happens. And then the Norwegians, they come from far out there singing in big groups and holding the candles, coming towards the Grand Hotel, and they would stand outside Grand Hotel singing. Then you have to come out, there's a veranda, and wave to them. We came out, de Klerk didn't come out with his people. Anyway, back inside, the whole thing started. Now de Klerk is so angry. He had to make a speech, and Mandela make a speech as well. So they started with de Klerk, but he was so angry. He just said, "Oh yeah, the focus here was on Mandela and not on me." But also it was their fault not to go outside, But Mandela was... I know him when he doesn't like something, but he will not be rude or anything. You can just see from his face that he's not happy with something. He gave his speech and did not even refer to what de Klerk said.
He remained dignified.
Yes.
At all times.
Yeah.
As you all did.
And then people continue to respect you. Yes.
You had your held up high, It was held up high. And you obviously represent dignity and honor.
No, so those were the things that one was confronted with in all this. It was what a long journey. But worthwhile for me. I just feel that one learned so much, and I mean, nobody really can ever take that experience away from you. Nobody. You experienced it all, went through all the good and the difficult times.
And it was because of you that history will now remember the liberation of black people in South Africa, because of people like you.
Yeah.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for giving me your time today. It was an absolute honour. And thank you, Bishop Trevor for organising this, and for Jay, of course, with regards to filming and editing. Thank you for your time. And I hope the message goes out to everybody that, you know, just don't give up on your struggles, remain steadfast, and you'll make it, you'll get there. Thank you very much for watching, and do subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you, Jay.